What is good, YouTube? Quinn Wade basketball analysis coming to y'all with that quick analysis. We're going to talk about playoff reaction to the Memphis series, obviously to the Knicks series, to the Mavs series, and then the last one that happened was the Washington Philly series. Washington came in, got off to a decent start. They just couldn't keep up with the Sixers, even without Joel Embiid. The Sixers was able to be patient. Guys like Korkmaz was able to knock down threes. Guys like Seth Curry was able to, score either if it was a set three, he was able to score off the dribble from time to time. And he had a good all around game when it comes to being offensively ready. You also look at Tobias. He came out very well. Like I said, he has played like an all-star to a certain extent in this series, and they're small. The Wizards not that big, and Tobias has been taken advantage of, being able to shoot over them, being able to be aggressive because they can't keep somebody that can stay in front of them either. And he really just exposed them, especially with Davis Bertans being out and not playing significant minutes and making shots throughout the series. They had nobody that they can really throw on them besides Rui, but he can't do it either because they just get to switch, and then he gets the matchup that he wants, and he just destroys them. Danny Green was basically huge in the entire series, defending and hitting threes when they needed them the most or to help them get a cushion or get the lead. You got to give credit to Ben Simmons being more aggressive than he usually is, finishing in the paint, picking apart defenses, keeping the pace going at the way that the Sixers want, even on the defensive end. And you got to get credit to Maxey. He was able to probe in that defense and knock down shots, and it was just too much for the Wizards. They was able to exploit anything that the Wizards did. The Wizards haven't been a great defensive team throughout the entire last couple years, and the Sixers basically was patient. They found ways to get shots that they was comfortable or they knew that they could make, and they found them. And the Wizards just couldn't score enough on the Sixers defense. And even though you have a huge game from Russ, a double double, he was able to find his shots and pick apart the defense and keep the tempo to the best way that they could. It's just they just didn't have enough. Bradley Beal got 30 again, plus they forced him to take tough contested shots, and he was able to make some. He was able to find a little bit of the easy ones, but just not enough. They needed just a little bit more from somebody else because Rui also had another great game, being able to knock down mid-range, being able to finish, being able to knock down some threes. He was able to show that he can be the third best player on his team. The problem is they still need to be a better defensive team while also being one piece away from having another offensive player. When Bradley Beal and Russ can't score consistently, they need another guy that they can rely on outside of Rui, and they just don't have that right now. But other than that, they went out there and did the best they could. They just was a little overmatched and just a little bit outcoached, and they just didn't have enough stops to give themselves a legitimate chance to win this game. And the Wizards go home and they're done, and Philly will be playing the winner of this series, which is the Knicks and the Hawks. The Hawks just had too much firepower. That's why I picked them to win this series, and they pretty much got it done earlier than anybody thought, making the Knicks only win one game and then lose three straight games, including games in New York. And it just was amazing to see a young team like the Hawks, who really have no playoff experience, have killer instinct and killer will, and they assassinated the Knicks. They literally found ways to get efficient offense throughout the whole series against a great defensive team, and they was also able to defend Julius Randle very well, even though he made some mistakes himself. But you still gotta give the credit to the Hawks for being able to score on one of the best defenses, if not the best defense in the league. And they made it look easy. I feel like they got high efficient shots. They was able to find a 3-point shooter for easy shots. Trae Young basically torched them for the entire series, being efficient from three to a certain extent and efficient from the field, while also getting a lot of assists, which means he was finding the dunkers, finding lobs, finding ways to get guys open shots, whether it was even helping them get a look to where they can turn it into an open shot because of the defense of the Knicks. And the Knicks couldn't score. They didn't have enough spacing. They didn't have a dominant series from Julius Randle. They didn't have great consistent games from R.J. Barrett. Derrick Rose was basically their best player the entire series, and that just can't happen at this point of his career. He's a great player. He's a great contributor, but he can't be your best offensive player if you really want to be serious in the NBA. And it ultimately was a demise of their offense. Just couldn't score enough baskets, just couldn't get enough stops to turn into transition. And the Hawks basically picked them apart, found ways to continue to get quality shots, and they just knocked them down. And the Knicks just couldn't do that. It's a make or miss lead. The Hawks was making their shots and their threes, and the Knicks just couldn't knock them down enough. And they just got outscored, and it just kept piling on. And as you know, they was piling their way out of the building with a lot of bricks, and they just can't get back in the building now because it is barricaded, and now they have to move on. The Grizzly game was over pretty quick. Not gonna cover this one too much because they just came out and they was able to contain Ja Morant and Dylan Brooks to a certain extent. Ja Morant was still able to score. He was still able to get guys involved, but not enough guys off the bench stepped up. They bench came out and had a decent numbers when you look at the combined and total of it. But when you look at the impact on the game defensively and offensively, you needed another guy to have a bigger, better game. And Dylan Brooks in that starting lineup was able to do their part, but they weren't able to take their game to another level like they were doing throughout the series and really try to destroy the Jazz. The Jazz came out, they played their game, they played their style, continued to move the ball, find Gobert if they rotate too hard or they trying to stop a shooter. He was able to get 20 and 10 and gobble up a lot of rebounds and finish around the basket. And then the shooters. Donovan Mitchell was able to score or get a lot of guys involved because he was so aggressive, getting guys in foul trouble or just breaking down and collapsing the defense with his aggressiveness. And he ended up having 30 and double-digit assists too. Bogdanovich was able to splash. Conley was able to splash. Royce O'Neal was 3 for 7 from three. Just an onslaught from three again, while also finding ways to pick apart the defense when they make mistakes to over rotate or over help, and just finding the right guy and getting the ball moving. If you don't have a quality shot, Jordan Clarkson was essential to this game, having 24 points, being able to hit threes and other shots that could put a lot of pressure on the Memphis Grizzlies defense to make decisions, and they did make good decisions. It's just they made more shots, and that's just how it goes. This was a team game. This is a team game, and the Jazz was a better defensive team in this series. There was a better offensive team in this series. There was a more complete team this series, and they was able to finish them off in five, which is earlier than what I thought and earlier than what other people thought. But it is something that happened. And last, the game everybody want to know about, the Mavericks will beat the Clippers. They will lose 2 games against the Clippers, and then they will win the next game, putting Kawhi Leonard and the Paul George duo on the brink of elimination already, with Luka Doncic basically destroying them from the offensive end, finding way too many guys open for three or layups, and being able to take advantage of any matchup, any defense that they threw at them, being able to score in the post, being able to score from the floater, being able to score from tough shots from three, whether it was a step back or a pull up, and being able to knock down that mid-range fade that he got now, and also finish in the basket, even if it's in transition. Tim Hardaway Jr. finally showed up, knocking out some big threes and some big shots to help them extend the lead and keep Kawhi Leonard and them away. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George just have to play better, even though it sounds crazy, but they have to play even better than what they have because they gotta cross out Luka, and Luka has been dominant in this series. They have no answer for him at all. And the thing that's funny is Luka is mixing it up throughout the entire game. He's not just relying on one way to beat him. He's finding multiple ways to score and multiple ways to get shots that he wants, and he's knocking them down. Besides last game, and somebody on the Clippers are just gonna have to step up. I feel like Reggie Jackson did a good job, spacing the floor for Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. Kawhi Leonard had a lot of turnovers and a lot of mistakes on his end by being aggressive, and I think that that's something that they're going to have to figure out when he passes the ball or when he's trying to make a play. He just has to be smarter. He just has to be a little bit more patient and not force it or rush it, and maybe he can get cleaner passes off. Paul George is going to have to do better. He chose to play with Paul George. He wanted Paul George to be with him, and now they lost in the second round this year. I mean, last year, and this year they could be going home in the first round. Porzingis knocked down some threes. Smith knocked down some threes for Mavericks too. They just gave Luka the proper spacing, and they also was able to play off of him very well. They didn't have great games from players off the Mavericks, but they made the shots that mattered. He made the plays that matter, and he just got them quality looks to where they just had to finish the shot or make the right play. And the Mavericks was able to do that more than the Clippers. The Clippers gave themselves opportunities to win the game, just like in Game 1. They never stepped up when it mattered most to take the game or steal it from the Mavericks. And the Mavericks say that's fine. We'll take the W. We'll go up 3-2 going back to Dallas, and we'll see y'all there. And we might have to put y'all out if Luka continues to play the way he's been playing. The Mavericks will win this series. If Kawhi Leonard goes back to playing the way he played 2 games prior, then the Clippers still have a legitimate shot to win this series and win the next game. It's all about the others. Can Paul George have a big game? Can Reggie Jackson continue his three-point shooting? Can Rondo play better than he played last game? Can Batum be more of a factor defensively and splash more threes offensively? And can, Zubac have another great game offensively and rebounding wise that he had tonight? All those small little things, rebounding, passing, knocking down shots, all that sounds easy. All that sounds like what you should do, but you do have to do it to win, especially against this Dallas Mavericks team. They're not the greatest defensive team, but they picked it up in the third quarter, and they was able to get a good lead, and they was able to ride it to the W, and that's something that the Clippers can't have. Once Paul George got in foul trouble, once they put Kawhi Leonard basically on the bench, the Mavericks made their run and never looked back. So that's something that Ty Lue is going to have to figure out, and the Clippers are just going to have to defend better, be smarter, and make better plays and knock down their shots, and they can still win this series. The Mavericks just got to keep doing what they've been doing, and Luka just going to have to continue to knock down shots. If he's knocking shots from mid-range and he's knocking shots from three, there's really nothing the Clippers can do but live with it. And if they living with something like that, just got to go home and say they was a better team, and you did the best you can. Other than that, Quinn Wade Basketball Analysis signing out. Let me know what I got right, what I got wrong, what I overrated, underrated, who you think is going to win the series between the Mavericks and the Clippers. What you guys think about the Memphis series, the Knicks series, and the Wizards series. Other than that, I'll see you guys hopefully later today. Quinn Wade, Basketball Analysis. I'm gone.